The message arrived on a cold morning in February. Daniel Carter was sitting in his office at Earth's diplomatic headquarters when his screen lit up with an urgent notification. He set down his coffee and read the words slowly, then read them again. The Galactic Council was summoning humanity. Daniel had served as Earth's chief ambassador for 30 years. He had negotiated trade deals with alien species. He had shaken hands and tentacles and appendages he could not even name with beings from across the stars. But in all his years, he had never received a summons from the Council itself. The Council was old. It was older than human civilization, older than human history, older than humanity itself. 12 species sat on the Council, and each of them had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves and hunting with stone tools. They had built empires and watched them fall. They had seen countless species rise and fade away. And now, they wanted to talk to Earth. Daniel walked to his window and looked out at the city below. Flying vehicles moved through the air in neat lines. Towers of glass and steel reached toward the sky. 300 years ago, humans had launched their first ship beyond the solar system. Now, they had colonies on 47 worlds. They had built stations in the dark spaces between stars. They had created technology that rivaled civilizations millions of years older. He understood why the Council was worried. His assistant knocked on the door and entered. Her name was Lisa Grant, and she had been working with Daniel for 15 years. She was sharp and quick, and she never missed a detail. She was also the only person Daniel trusted completely. "You saw the message," she said. "It was not a question. I saw it." Lisa sat down across from his desk. The Zethrani filed a formal complaint. They claim our settlers have moved too close to their sacred border worlds. They want the Council to step in. Daniel nodded slowly. The Zethrani were one of the oldest species in the galaxy. They were tall and serpentine, with scales that shifted color in the light. They had been watching humanity's expansion with growing anger for decades. They did not like sharing the galaxy with newcomers. "What do they want?" Daniel asked. Lisa pulled up a document on her tablet. "They want us to sign a treaty. The Council has drafted the terms already." She paused. "You should read it yourself." Daniel took the tablet and began to read. The more he read, the colder he felt inside. The treaty would limit humanity to their current 47 worlds. No new colonies, no expansion beyond their existing borders. Human military forces would be reduced to defensive capabilities only. In exchange, Earth would receive protected status from the Council, trade agreements, security guarantees, a place in the galactic community. It sounded generous. It sounded reasonable. It sounded like a death sentence, wrapped in pretty words. "They want to put us in a cage," Daniel said. Lisa nodded. "A comfortable cage." Daniel set the tablet down and stood up. He walked back to the window. Somewhere out there, beyond the blue sky, the stars were waiting. Humans had always looked at those stars with wonder. They had always wanted to know what was out there. That curiosity had driven them out of caves and across oceans, and finally into space itself. Now the oldest powers in the galaxy wanted them to stop. "Call Nathan," Daniel said. "We need to prepare for the journey." Commander Nathan Price arrived within the hour. He was a tall man, with gray at his temples, and a calm face that rarely showed emotion. He had spent 20 years in Earth's defense forces before joining the diplomatic corps. He was the best security officer Daniel had ever worked with. "The Council meeting is scheduled for 3 weeks from now," Nathan said. "The location is Velara Prime." Daniel had heard of Velara Prime. It was a massive station built millions of years ago by a species that no longer existed. The Council used it for their most important gatherings. No weapons were allowed on the station. No military vessels could approach within 1,000 kilometers. "It's a trap," Lisa said. "They're bringing us to their ground, their rules, their terms." "Maybe," Daniel agreed, "but we have to go." Refusing the summons would be seen as an act of war. They spent the next 3 weeks preparing. Daniel studied every species on the Council. He learned their histories, their customs, their fears. He read reports on every interaction humanity had ever had with each of them. He looked for weaknesses. He looked for allies. He found neither. Lisa worked on the diplomatic arguments. She built cases for why the treaty was unfair. She gathered evidence of human contributions to the galaxy. She prepared speeches and counteroffers and compromises. Nathan arranged for their transport and security. He selected a small team of guards who would wait on the ship while Daniel faced the council alone. Protocol demanded that ambassadors enter the chamber without protection. It was meant to show trust. Daniel thought it was meant to show vulnerability. The night before they departed, Daniel stood alone in his office. The city lights glittered below him like earthbound stars. He thought about all the humans out there in the galaxy. Farmers on distant worlds, scientists in orbital stations, children being born under alien suns who would never see Earth. They were all counting on him. They did not know it, but they were. He thought about the treaty again, the comfortable cage, the slow, quiet death of human ambition. He thought about all those other species who had accepted similar offers over the millions of years of galactic history. Where were they now? He already knew the answer. Most of them were gone. Extinct. Faded away into nothing. They had traded their future for safety and discovered too late that safety was just another word for surrender. Daniel made a decision that night. He did not tell Lisa. He did not tell Nathan. He kept it locked inside his heart like a secret flame. He would not sign the treaty. He would not put humanity in a cage. Whatever it cost him, whatever it cost Earth, he would find another way. The next morning, their ship lifted off from the surface and climbed toward the stars. Daniel watched Earth grow smaller in the viewport until it was just a blue dot against the black. Then, it was gone. And there was only the darkness ahead. Somewhere in that darkness, the Galactic Council was waiting. They expected a frightened young species eager to accept whatever scraps the ancient powers offered. They were about to meet something else entirely. The journey to Velara Prime took 11 days. Daniel spent most of that time alone in his cabin, reading and thinking. Lisa brought him reports and updates. Nathan checked on security arrangements. But Daniel needed silence. He needed to prepare himself for what was coming. On the 12th day, they arrived. Velara Prime was unlike anything Daniel had ever seen. It hung in the darkness of space like a small moon. But it was not natural. It was built. Ancient architects had constructed it from metals and materials that human scientists still could not identify. Lights glowed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost like writing in a language no one remembered. The species that built this place had been dead for millions of years. No one knew their name anymore. No one knew what they looked like, or how they lived, or why they disappeared. Only their station remained, a monument to a forgotten civilization that now served as the meeting place for the powers that ruled the galaxy. Daniel stood at the viewport and watched as they approached. "How old is this place?" he asked. Lisa checked her tablet. Best estimates say at least 50 million years. Maybe older. 50 million years. When this station was built, dinosaurs still walked on Earth. Humans would not exist for another 49 million years. And yet here they were, coming to argue for their right to exist among the stars. Their ship docked at one of the station's many ports. Nathan's security team stayed behind. Only Daniel, Lisa, and a small group of assistants were allowed to enter. They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past walls covered in symbols that glowed with soft light. Other species moved through the corridors around them. Daniel saw creatures of every shape and size. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated through the air or crawled along the walls. Many had translators attached to their bodies, converting their words into sounds other species could understand. A few of them looked at the humans with curiosity. Most looked at them with something else. Fear, perhaps, or contempt. They reached the entrance to the council chamber. A massive door stood before them, carved from a single piece of dark stone. Two guards, stood on either side. They were Voreth, crystalline beings whose bodies seemed to be made of living glass. They said nothing as Daniel approached. "I am Ambassador Daniel Carter of Earth," Daniel said. "I have been summoned by the council." The guard stepped aside, and the door opened. The chamber beyond was vast. It was circular, with a domed ceiling that rose so high Daniel could barely see it. The walls were lined with seats, thousands of them, filled with observers from across the galaxy. At the center of the chamber was a single platform where the summoned would stand. Surrounding it, on 12 elevated platforms, sat the representatives of the council. Daniel walked forward alone. Lisa and the others had to wait outside. This was the way it had always been done. One voice for each species, one representative to speak for billions. He stepped onto the central platform and looked up at the council. The Zethrani delegate was directly ahead. The serpentine creature coiled upon its platform, its scales shifting from green to gold in the chamber's light. Its eyes were cold and old and filled with hatred for the young species that dared to challenge its dominance. To the left sat the Vorath representative, a being of pure crystal that seemed to have no face at all. Light passed through its body in strange patterns, and when it spoke, the words came from everywhere at once. There were others, the Kalori, ancient and withered, the oldest of all the council species, the Morthani, massive creatures with armored shells and too many limbs, the Silethri, delicate beings that floated like living clouds, species that had been old when humanity's ancestors first crawled out of the ocean. The Zethrani spoke first. Its voice was a hiss that the translator converted into cold, precise words. "Human ambassador, you stand before the council to answer for your species' crimes. Your expansion has violated boundaries, established millions of years ago. Your technology grows at a rate that threatens the stability of galactic civilization. Your very existence disrupts the balance we have maintained since before your star was born." Daniel said nothing. He let the words wash over him and kept his face calm. "The council has shown great patience with your kind," the Zethrani continued. "We have watched your species grow from primitives to starfarers in the blink of a cosmic eye. We have tolerated your noise and your chaos and your endless hunger for more. But our patience has limits. Ring mature formal. We have to supportance." The Voreth spoke next. "We offer you terms of peace. You will withdraw your colonies to the 40 worlds nearest your home system. You will cease all military development beyond what is needed for defense. You will submit to council oversight of your technological research. In return, you will receive protected status. You will have access to trade with council species. You will have a place in our civilization." Protected status. Daniel had researched what that meant. It meant becoming a client species. It meant giving up the right to make your own choices. It meant asking permission before you built a new ship, or founded a new colony, or developed a new technology. It meant surrendering everything that made humanity what it was. The Voreth continued. "This is a generous offer. More generous than any young species has received in the history of the Council. You should accept it with gratitude." Daniel looked around the chamber. Thousands of eyes watched him, some with curiosity, some with pity, some with satisfaction. They all expected him to do the same thing every other young species had done when faced with the power of the Council. They expected him to submit. Daniel took a slow breath. He thought about Earth. He thought about all the human colonies scattered across the stars. He thought about the children who would grow up in a cage if he said yes, never knowing what their species might have become. "May I ask a question before we proceed?" Daniel said. The council murmured. The Zethrani's eyes narrowed. "You may. How many species in this galaxy have accepted protected status over the past 1,000,000 years?" The Voreth answered without hesitation. 412 species have been granted the honor of protected status. And how many of those species still exist today? Silence fell over the chamber. The kind of silence that comes when someone says something that was never meant to be said out loud. Daniel waited. He already knew the answer. He had spent weeks researching it. But he wanted them to say it. He wanted everyone in the chamber to hear it. The Vorath did not respond. Neither did any other member of the council. Finally, the oldest voice in the chamber spoke. Ambassador Cyrath of the Kalori, a being so ancient that even the other council members treated it with reverence. Its voice was like dry leaves rustling in the wind. 25, Cyrath said. 25 species remain. Daniel nodded slowly. So, out of 412 species who accepted your protection, 387 are now extinct. He let that number hang in the air. And you call this an honor? The chamber exploded into noise. Delegates shouted from their seats. Council members turned to each other in shock. The Zethrani rose from its coiled position and hissed words that the translator struggled to process. Daniel stood at the center of it all and waited. He had prepared for this moment. He had known that speaking the truth would cause chaos. But the truth needed to be spoken. Too many species had walked into this chamber and accepted their chains without ever asking why. Without ever looking at what happened to those who came before them. The Zethrani finally managed to make itself heard above the noise. You dare to question the council? You dare to suggest that we have done anything but protect the younger species of this galaxy? I am not suggesting anything, Daniel replied. His voice was calm and steady. I am stating facts. Your own records show what happened to those species. They accepted your protection. They stopped expanding. They stopped growing. They stopped reaching for anything beyond what they already had. He began to walk slowly around the platform. Every eye in the chamber followed him. At first, they were grateful. They had security. They had trade. They had a place in your civilization. But a species that stops growing is a species that starts dying. It does not happen quickly. It takes generations, centuries, sometimes thousands of years. But it happens. The Morthani delegate, a massive creature covered in thick armor plates, spoke in a rumbling voice. You speak of things you cannot understand. Your species is an infant. What do you know of the long ages of galactic history? I know enough, Daniel said. I know that the Pelthori accepted protected status 800,000 years ago. They were a proud species. Explorers. Builders. They had settled 100 worlds before the council found them. And now? He paused. Now there are fewer than 1 million of them left, living on a single world, dependent on council supplies to survive. He turned to face another part of the chamber. I know that the Vexari were once the most creative species in the galaxy. They invented technologies that you still use today. When they accepted protection, they were told they could focus on their art and their science without worrying about survival. 300,000 years later, they were gone. The last Vexari died alone on a station, painting pictures of stars her people would never reach. The chamber was quiet now. Daniel's words had cut through the noise and touched something that many of these species had tried to forget. This is what you offer us, Daniel continued. A slow, comfortable death. A cage made of treaties and protections and kind words. You tell us it is for our own good. You tell us we will be safe. But safety without purpose is not life. It is waiting for extinction. The Zethrani's scales had turned dark red, a sign of extreme anger. You twist history to serve your arguments. Those species failed because they were weak. They lacked the strength to survive. Humanity will suffer the same fate, protected or not. Daniel shook his head. They were not weak. They were broken. You broke them. You took away their reason to strive, their need to grow, their hunger to become more than they were. And without those things, no species can survive. He stopped walking and faced the council directly. Humanity rejects your offer. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The words seemed to hang in the air like a physical thing. Then the chaos returned, worse than before. "This is unprecedented," the Vorath cried. "Then we will be the first," Daniel said. The Zethrani slammed something against its platform that made a sound like thunder. "You understand what this means? You are declaring yourselves enemies of the Council. We have the power to crush your species. We have fleets that could burn your worlds to ash. We have weapons that could end your existence in a single day." Daniel met the creature's gaze without flinching. "Yes, you have all those things. You have had them for millions of years. And what have you done with them? You have maintained the status quo. You have preserved your power. You have made sure that no young species ever grows strong enough to challenge you." He raised his voice so that everyone in the chamber could hear. "But you have not built anything new in 1,000,000 years. You have not discovered anything new. You have not created anything that matters. You sit in your ancient halls and guard your ancient privileges, and tell yourselves that you are the masters of the galaxy. But you are not masters, you are caretakers, and you are doing a terrible job." A gasp went through the crowd. No one had ever spoken to the Council this way. No representative of a young species had ever stood in this chamber and refused to bow. The Silethri delegate, a floating creature of mist and light, spoke in a voice like music. "You condemn us, human. But what would you have us do? Allow every young species to grow without limit? Let chaos consume the galaxy?" "Yes," Daniel said simply. "Let there be chaos. Let there be competition. Let there be struggle and failure and success. That is how life works. That is how species become strong, not by being protected, but by being tested." He pointed at the Council platforms. "You were tested once. All of you. When you were young, you had to fight and build and grow without anyone to protect you. That is why you survived. That is why you became powerful. And then you pulled up the ladder behind you. You made sure no one else could climb as high as you did." The Morthani made a sound that might have been a laugh. "And you think humanity deserves to climb that ladder? You think your species is special? I think every species deserves the chance to try," Daniel said. "I think the galaxy would be a better place if you stopped smothering every civilization that shows potential. Maybe some of them would fail. Maybe some would burn out or destroy themselves. But at least they would have lived. At least they would have reached for something greater than survival. Ask. He stood tall on the platform. A single human facing the combined power of the oldest civilizations in existence. Humanity will not accept your cage. We will not sign your treaty. We will continue to grow and explore and build. If you want to stop us, you will have to destroy us. And if you do that, if you burn our worlds and kill our people, then the entire galaxy will see what the Council really is." The Zethrani's voice dripped with venom. "And what is that?" "Wote," Daniel smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Afraid. You are afraid of us. You are afraid of what we might become. And you should be. Because we are just getting started." The chamber erupted once more. Delegates screamed for action. Council members demanded votes on sanctions and military responses. The Zethrani called for humanity's immediate expulsion from galactic society. But through all the noise, Daniel noticed one thing. Ambassador Sirath of the Kalori, the oldest being in the chamber, had not said a word since confirming the number of extinct species. The ancient creature simply sat on its platform, watching Daniel with eyes that held something unexpected. It almost looked like hope. The noise in the chamber continued for several minutes. Daniel remained on the central platform, watching the chaos he had created. The Zethrani was demanding immediate military action. The Vorath wanted economic sanctions that would cut humanity off from all galactic trade. Other species called for different punishments, each one more severe than the last. But no vote was called, no decision was made, because the oldest member of the Council had not spoken. Ambassador Sirath of the Kalori sat perfectly still on its elevated platform. The ancient being looked like a tree that had been alive for too long. Its skin was rough and gray, like bark. Its limbs were thin and twisted. Its eyes, buried deep in a face full of wrinkles, glowed with a faint golden light. The Kalori were the first. Every species in the galaxy knew this. Before the Zethrani built their empire, before the Vorath spread across the stars, before any of the other council species even existed, the Kalori were already old. They had watched the rise and fall of civilizations for longer than any records could measure. And now Sirith was watching Daniel. Slowly, the ancient being raised one withered hand. The chamber fell silent. When Sirath moved, everyone stopped to listen. It was not just respect. It was something closer to awe. "Young human," Sirath said. Its voice was soft and dry, like wind moving through dead leaves. "Do you understand what you have done today?" Daniel nodded. "I have refused the council's offer. You have done more than that." Sirith's golden eyes seemed to glow brighter. "You have spoken truths that have not been spoken in this chamber for millions of years. You have accused us of crimes we have spent ages hiding from ourselves." The Zethrani hissed angrily. "These are not crimes. We have protected the galaxy from chaos and destruction." Sirith did not look at the Zethrani. Its eyes remained fixed on Daniel. "Tell me, human, how did you learn about the species we protected? How did you discover what happened to them?" "I researched your own records," Daniel said. "Everything I said can be found in council archives. The information is not hidden. It is simply ignored." A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. Sirith nodded slowly. "Yes. We did not hide what we did. We simply stopped looking at it. We told ourselves comfortable lies. We said those species were weak. We said they would have failed anyway. We said our protection gave them centuries of peace before the end." The ancient voice grew heavier. "But peace without purpose is not peace. It is paralysis." The Zethrani rose higher on its coils. "What are you saying, Sirith? Surely you do not agree with this human's accusations?" Sirath was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, impossibly, the ancient being began to descend from its platform. It had not left that elevated seat in living memory. No council member descended to the floor during a session. It simply was not done. But Sirath was older than the rules. Perhaps Sirath was older than the council itself. The ancient Kalori walked toward Daniel with slow, careful steps. Its body seemed fragile, as if it might break apart at any moment. But its eyes burned with a light that was anything but weak. Sirath stopped a few feet from Daniel and looked up at him. Despite its age, despite everything it had seen, the ancient being seemed almost excited. "Do you know why the Kalori supported the creation of this council?" Sirith asked. Daniel shook his head. "I assumed you wanted to maintain order, to prevent wars between species. That is what we told ourselves. That is what we told others. But the truth is simpler and uglier." Sirith turned to face the other council members. "We were afraid." End quote. Silence filled the chamber. "The Kalori were the first," Sirith continued. "We reached the stars when the galaxy was empty. We spread across thousands of worlds without anyone to stop us. We built wonders that younger species can barely imagine. And then, after millions of years, we began to see others rising." The ancient being's voice grew stronger. "Young species, climbing out of their home worlds, reaching for the stars just as we once did. And we looked at them, and we felt something we had never felt before. Fear. We were afraid they would become like us. We were afraid they would surpass us. We were afraid of becoming irrelevant." Daniel listened in silence. He had suspected something like this, but hearing it spoken aloud was still shocking. "So we built the council," Sirath said. "We gathered the oldest and most powerful species and created a system that would keep us safe forever. We offered protection to young species, and they accepted it gratefully. They did not realize what they were giving up. We told ourselves we were being kind. We told ourselves we were preventing wars and suffering. Sirath turned back to Daniel. But you are right, human. We were not protecting them. We were smothering them. We were making sure they could never grow strong enough to threaten us. And in doing so, we condemned them to extinction. The Zethrani's voice cut through the air. This is madness. You are betraying everything the Council stands for. No, Sirath said calmly. I am finally telling the truth about what the Council really is. We are not protectors. We are jailers. We have spent millions of years building a cage for the entire galaxy, and we have called it civilization. The ancient Kalori looked at Daniel with something like gratitude. I have waited a very long time for someone to say what you said today. Many species have come to this chamber. All of them accepted our terms. All of them chose the comfortable death we offered. But not you. Not humanity. Daniel found his voice. Why did you never speak up before? If you knew the truth, why did you let it continue? Sirath's face twisted into something that might have been a sad smile. Because I was afraid. Because it was easier to stay silent. Because I told myself that one voice could not change anything. The ancient eyes met Daniel's. But you have shown me that I was wrong. One voice can change everything, if that voice speaks the truth. Sirath turned to face the full council. I call for a vote. Not on sanctions against humanity. Not on military action. I call for a vote on the abolition of the protected status system. I call for an end to the cage we have built around the galaxy. The chamber exploded into chaos once more. But this time, Daniel noticed something different. Not everyone was shouting in anger. Some of the delegates were nodding. Some were looking at each other with expressions that suggested they had been waiting for this moment too. The truth, once spoken, could not be unspoken, and the galaxy would never be the same. The vote took 3 days. Daniel waited on Velara Prime while the council debated. He was not allowed in the chamber during this time. Only the 12 members could participate in the discussion. But news leaked out through the thousands of observers who had witnessed his speech. The galaxy was talking about what happened. Messages traveled across the stars at faster than light speed. Species that had never heard of Earth were suddenly discussing the human ambassador who dared to reject the council. Some called him a fool. Some called him a hero. Most were simply shocked that anyone would do what he had done. Lisa stayed by Daniel's side during the wait. She looked exhausted. Neither of them had slept much since the speech. You know this might not work, she said on the second night. Sirath is respected, but the Zethrani have a lot of power. They could still vote for war, Daniel nodded. He had considered this many times. If they vote for war, then at least we will know where we stand. At least we will have a chance to fight. We, too, against the council? Against species, with millions of years of technology and resources? Humans have always been good at fighting when our backs are against the wall. Daniel smiled slightly. Besides, I do not think the council is as strong as it pretends to be. They have spent so long maintaining the status quo that they have forgotten how to actually do anything. Their fleets are old. Their weapons are outdated. They have not had to fight a real war in ages. Lisa shook her head. You are gambling everything on that belief. I am gambling everything on humanity. Daniel corrected. I believe in our species. I believe we can adapt and grow and overcome any challenge. That is what we have always done. That is what we will keep doing. No matter what the council decides, on the third day, they were summoned back to the chamber. The room was different now. The noise and chaos of the first session was gone. The delegates sat in silence. The council members looked tired, as if the debate had drained something from them. Sirath stood at the edge of the central platform. The ancient Kalori had apparently refused to return to its elevated seat. It wanted to deliver the news from the floor, as an equal, not from a position of authority. Ambassador Daniel Carter of Earth, Sirath said. The council has reached a decision. Daniel stepped forward onto the platform. His heart was beating faster than normal, but his face remained calm. Whatever happened, he would face it with dignity. The vote was 7-5. Sirith continued. The majority has decided to abolish the system of protected status. The treaties that restricted young species will no longer be enforced. The cage, as you called it, is open. For a moment, Daniel could not breathe. He had hoped for this outcome. He had fought for it. But some part of him had not truly believed it was possible. Furthermore, Sirith said, the Council has voted to restructure itself. We will no longer serve as rulers of the galaxy. We will become advisors, offering guidance to those who seek it, but never imposing our will. The old ways are ending. A new era is beginning. The Zethrani spoke from its platform, its voice cold with anger. Let the record show that the Zethrani hegemony opposed this decision. We withdraw from the Council. We will not be part of this foolishness. 3 other species announced their withdrawal as well. They left the chamber without looking back. But 7 remained. 7 ancient civilizations had chosen to embrace change rather than cling to power. It was more than Daniel had dared to hope. After the formal session ended, Sirith approached Daniel privately. They walked together through one of Velara Prime's endless corridors. Far from listening ears. You took a great risk today, Sirith said. If the vote had gone differently, your species would be facing destruction. I know, Daniel said. But some risks are worth taking. Living in fear is not really living at all. Wine. Living in fear? Living in fear? Sirith made a sound that might have been a laugh. They stopped at a window that looked out at the stars. Thousands of points of light filled the darkness. Thousands of possibilities. What will humanity do now? Sirith asked. Daniel considered the question. The same things we have always done. Explore. Build. Grow. Make mistakes, and learn from them. Reach for things we cannot yet imagine. You will face challenges. The species that left the Council will not simply accept this change. They will try to stop you. They will try to restore the old order. Let them try. Daniel's voice was firm. We did not come to the stars because it was easy. We came because we could not stay home. We came because something inside us refuses to accept limits. If there are challenges ahead, we will face them. If there are enemies, we will deal with them. That is what humanity does. Sirith studied him for a long moment. Your species frightens me, Daniel Carter. You grow so quickly. You change so rapidly. In a few centuries, you have nearly matched what took us millions of years to achieve. Daniel turned to face the ancient being. Does that have to be a threat? No. Sirith's voice softened. Perhaps it can be an inspiration. We have been dying slowly. All of us old species, wrapped in our own success. We stopped reaching for anything new. We stopped dreaming of anything beyond what we already had. Perhaps humanity can remind us what it means to truly live. When Daniel returned to his ship, Lisa and Nathan were waiting. They had heard the news. Lisa was smiling for the first time in days. Nathan remained calm, but there was a light in his eyes that had not been there before. You did it, Lisa said. You actually did it. We did it, Daniel corrected. Humanity did it. I just spoke the words. The ship lifted off from Velara Prime and began the long journey back to Earth. Daniel sat in the observation lounge, watching the ancient station grow smaller behind them. Lisa joined him after a while. What happens now? Daniel thought about all the work that lay ahead. Treaties to renegotiate. Alliances to build. Enemies to prepare for. It would take years, maybe decades, to navigate the new reality they had created. But that was fine. Humanity was good at building new realities. Now we grow, Daniel said. We keep reaching. We keep dreaming. We show the galaxy what a species can become when no one tells it to stop. Lisa looked out at the stars. Some people back home will say you went too far. They will say you risked everything. For nothing. Let them say what they want. History will decide who was right. Daniel smiled. Besides, when has humanity ever chosen the safe path? We are explorers. We are builders. We are dreamers. The moment we stop taking risks is the moment we start dying. The ship entered faster than light travel, and the stars blurred into streams of light. Somewhere ahead, Earth was waiting. 47 colonies were waiting. Billions of humans who had no idea what had just happened were waiting. Daniel thought about the future. There would be wars. There would be setbacks. There would be moments when everything seemed lost. But there would also be triumphs, discoveries, wonders that no one could yet imagine. The galaxy was open now. The cage was broken. And humanity was finally free to become whatever it was meant to be. Whatever that was, Daniel knew one thing for certain. It would be something extraordinary. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he felt at peace. The hardest part was over. The impossible had been accomplished. Now came the real work, building a future worthy of the freedom they had won. And humanity was ready.